Chapter 5. By the time Anita got to the bus stop, Lizzie was already holding court with a group of girls, all staring at the newspaper in her hands. All four girls wore some variation of the same sweater. One had on blue, one was in green, one in yellow, Lizzie in cream, and similar plaid skirts and loafers. They wore their hair pulled back with identical plaid headbands they'd purchased while shopping together. Anita liked wide headbands, but she preferred not to look so cookie-cutter. That was why she'd adorn her headband with a silk flower in an unusual teal color, which matched the flower brooch on her sweater. The satin fabric gave it a shimmer, and it stood out against her pale pink top. Instead of joining the other girls, Anita stood off to the side and got out the small leather notebook she'd bought with her birthday money. Then she started to sketch a new dress, one with pockets at just the right height to hold a pencil and the very notebook she was using. It would have a belt to show off her waist, and the top of the dress would billow slightly like a men's dress shirt. It would even look like a dress shirt, but with plaid cuffs and a plaid collar, giving a similar blue dress a little something more. The plaid would be unique too. She'd put some teal in it to go with the flower on the headband. When she was finished, she stared down at her work and felt pleased. Drawing was something she was good at. She found sketching dresses and animals soothing. She had several dresses designs next to drawings of Madeline. She was always sketching Madeline. She was always sketching Madeline. The corgi was the most patient subject. She wrote about Madeline too. Silly stories, really. Stories about the dog having adventures in London. She never shared her stories with anyone before. Anita assumed her mother would find the work a waste of time. "How are you going to become famous drawing pictures of dogs?" she'd say. So Anita kept the work to herself. "What is everyone doing this weekend?" a girl asked the group. "Lizzie, are you free this weekend to go to the cinema? I still haven't seen The Star with Bette Davis." "You haven't?" Lizzie said, acting surprised. "I've seen it twice, but I'd love to go a third time." Anita pursed her lips. "Liar. We went once with Mum and Father." Lizzie had been begging to go back, paying twice to see the same movie. How decadent. While it was clear most of the girls at Highbrook School had known one another since they were little, no one had any trouble making room for Lizzie. She and the other girls went to the coffee shop together after school some days, liked the same music, Nat King Cole and Danny Kaye, and were trying out for the musical together. To an outsider, it would seem Lizzie had been friends with the girls forever. This was how things always went for Lizzie. She was assertive and outgoing. She had no trouble connecting with people. Meanwhile, Anita broke out in a cold sweat any time she had to ask another student in the fifth form a question. Sitting with people she didn't know at lunch was too much for her to handle, so she took her sandwich outside and sat in the courtyard alone. It was easier to keep her head down and just work. Her grades, she would boast if she were the boasting type, were straight A's. She had the highest marks in most of her classes. She did every extra credit assignment and always handed her work in early. Teachers loved her. That was all that mattered, wasn't it? Friendship was overrated. But deep down, she knew she was lying to herself. She missed her two best friends from Hempstead, Claire and Marie. She'd been friends with them since they were small, so it was easy to talk to them. But she only spoke to them by phone now once a week. She was lonely. Not that she'd ever admit it. The girls at Highbrook seemed so different. They were all like Lizzie, and she was clearly nothing like her sister. "Do you like my scarf?" she heard a girl say. "She's always wearing scarves." "Oh, I wish I had thought of a scarf. I saw that picture of her in Reynolds News wearing one to her father's fashion show in Italy." "Italy? Can you imagine? She's so well-traveled. I bet she's been to America. I bet she's gone twice." For a moment, Anita was confused. Were they still talking about Bette Davis or another starlet? No, They were talking about Stella Deville. Started after the war, House of Deville fashion focused on high-end pieces like feathered hats that Anita wasn't sure anyone could afford. Still, they were lovely to look at. Dresses in wild colors, gowns embellished with crystals and feathers. Mr. Deville favored fur coats and muffs with every ensemble. Celebrities from Judy Garland to Elizabeth Taylor already wore House of Deville to events. Anita couldn't picture her favorite star, Audrey Hepburn, in the fashion line's gowns. Audrey was more understated, classic. That was how Anita would dress if she could. Today she had on Lizzie's old black skirt that was one size too large, so she'd altered it with an oversized pin to cinch the waist. She'd used a belt to try to pull the look together. No one more wore sweaters and belts, but she decided the look made her unique. I'm going to ask Stella to sit with me today, Lizzie decided. I'm sure she's seen the article. She'll definitely want to ask me about the Weatherby. That's all anyone will want to talk about at lunch, said Olive, who wore a lot of the same shade of green as her name, which Anita thought was unfortunate with her coloring. But do you think Stella will say yes? She usually sits alone and ignores anyone who tries to talk to her on the bus. I'm surprised she isn't driven in a private car, maybe even a Jaguar, said Pippi, whose face was covered in freckles. She lives in a hotel, which I find so romantic. Not just any hotel, the Saville. Olive reminded them all. Father says rooms there cost a fortune, and the DeVilles supposedly have 2 suites. 2! They must be filthy rich, Lizzie said enviously. Do you think they own 2 cars? Asked Bridget, whose blonde hair was so fair it was almost white. I don't know anyone who owns 2 cars, Bridget nudged Lizzie. If you sold that diamond necklace, your family could have 2 cars. 2 cars? Could you imagine? Asked Olive wistfully. I bet they don't want 2 cars, Lizzie surmised. My dad wouldn't want a second car. Maybe Stella's dad doesn't want one either. Why else would she take the bus? And if she takes the bus, that means she must want a seatmate and friends. Olive frowned. I don't know. If she wanted friends, wouldn't she talk to us already? We're the girls to talk to. They all nodded in agreement. She talks to no one, agreed Pippi, who looked worried. Not at school, not on the bus, not even to the teachers when they ask her questions. I can't tell if she just hates Highbrook School or dislikes all of us, added Bridget. How could she not like us? Lizzie argued. We're in 6th form, just like her. I think she's in 5th form, like your sister, said Pippi. She seems older, worldly, said Olive thoughtfully. I'm going to ask her to sit with me, Lizzie said definitively. We have a lot in common, you know. How so? Olive asked. The Weatherby is famous just like the House of Deville is famous. We can both understand what it's like to be in the spotlight. Lizzie took obvious pleasure in saying this. Anita stifled a laugh. Lizzie was going to ride this Weatherby news as far as she could take it. I know what you should do. You should wear the diamond and show it off to Stella, Olive declared. Oh, yes, Pippi said. Wear the diamond to school. I would love to see it in person. Lizzie paled. The diamond is usually locked up in our vault, for safety and all. But maybe Dad would let me if it were a special occasion, like if I were invited to an event with Stella, she brightened. Maybe if we sit together all week, she'll invite me to her father's spring fashion show. Oh, yes, said Olive. I read he has his first one in London happening in a couple of weeks. Can you imagine if Stella asked me not only go to the show with her, but be in the show? Lizzie asked dreamily. All the girls looked skyward, daydreaming of such a moment. Who will I sit with on the bus? Pippi whined, bursting the dream. You'll sit with each other, Lizzie told her, pointing to the others and playing with the collar on a plaid shirt. And maybe I will try to engage all of us in a conversation. That sounds fair, Bridget agreed. Anita heard raucous laughter and tensed as a group of boys rolled up just as the bus was coming down the street. She quickly put her notebook away before they could take it from her. They were always doing things like that, stealing the girls' pencils, stepping on the backs of their shoes, occasionally pulling a girl's hair. Mum said it meant the boy possibly wanted the girl's attention, but Anita thought it was a poor way to initiate conversation. One didn't see girls pulling boys' hair to talk to them now, did they? The boys, all nearly identical in their bottom-down shirts and navy slacks, clumped together as they jostled to get in line for the bus ahead of the girls. They, too, ignored her, all but one of them. Anita saw one boy smirking at her, and she grimaced. Roger Radcliffe. "Anita," he said, not sounding particularly friendly. "Roger," she said stiffly, refusing to look at him. She concentrated on the tree behind his head. He was a tall fellow with a thick head of blonde hair, which was always hanging in front of his eyes. He was lanky, almost like a Great Dane, with limbs too big for his body, as if he couldn't work them right yet. He was always bent over a notepad himself, humming music or lyrics. His father was the famed pianist Theodore Radcliffe, who performed sold-out concert at Royal Albert Hall all the time. Anita thought his son was a stuck-up snob. "What did you get on your math test?" he asked, because only he would be bold enough to ask such a question. The boy was relentless, cutting, always boastful and superior, and it drove her mad, completely mad. Usually Roger waited until they were seated in class. Unfortunately, they were in the same classes, to ask such questions, but not today. "I got an A-, she said, proud of her score. "Only got one answer wrong." "I got an A," he shot back. "I didn't get any answers wrong." She resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "Good for you, considering you got a B+ on the quiz a week before." Yes, she knew his scores, and he knew hers. They were the two most competitive kids in their form. Anita couldn't stand the boy. He walked with an air of superiority and acted the same way in class, correcting her even when she didn't need correcting. The boy just liked to be heard. It drove her mad. And then last week, Miss Norbert wanted them to partner up on a project. Anita hadn't been thrilled, but she didn't want to rock the boat, so she kept quiet. Roger, however, caused a scene in front of everyone. He said he didn't want to partner with her, or anyone for that matter, as he wanted to prove he could do the whole project on his own. He said Anita would only drag him down. Anita had gotten so angry she'd had an outburst, shouting at Roger about how he'd be lucky to be her partner. Their teacher had told them both to calm down, but not before Anita heard Roger mutter something under his breath. "Annoying Anita is in rare form today. Watch out," he said, and some of the other students laughed. If she were to draw that moment in her notebook, steam would be coming out of her ears. She hadn't wanted to be his partner either, but she would have done what was asked of her by their teacher. Instead, now she'd been saddled with this horrible nickname, and she was humiliated. She would be fine if she never had to lay eyes on Roger Radcliffe again. Clearly, that wasn't an option. Roger's eyes flashed. "Well, I already turned that B into an A. Miss Norbert let me do test corrections." Anita bristled. "Really? Then perhaps I'll ask to do the same for this math test." "You'll still be a few points behind me in the letterboard," he said matter-of-factly. Anita's cheeks burned as she finally snapped. "You let me worry about my grades, Roger Radcliffe, and you worry about your own horrible hair." Why couldn't she think of a snappy comeback? Anita turned around, tears springing to her eyes, and he walked away. Lizzie suddenly appeared by her side, her eyes darting around nervously. "Anita," she gasped, "what is going on?" Anita blinked rapidly, but knew if she spoke, she'd start to cry. "You're causing a scene," Lizzie warned, waving to another girl who was walking over to the bus stop. "Cut it out. Mom said Roger's father knows everyone in the theater district, and I don't want him hating our family name before I even start auditioning." Lizzie walked away again, leaving Anita to suffer in humiliation alone. Anita stood quietly, holding her bag to her chest as the bus pulled up. Tears tumbled down her cheeks now. Why was it that even when she tried to assert herself, people acted as if they didn't hear her? Lizzie, Roger, the kids at school, everyone walked all over her, and she allowed it to happen again and again, rarely sticking up for herself. Why was that so hard for her to do? Anita felt a sudden spark of anger and shoved her way past Roger, moving to the front of the line. "Hey!" Pippi started to say, but Anita ignored her, climbing on first and getting as far away from them as she could. Then she boldly took the coveted back row seat on the right before anyone else could. She dared anyone to stop her. Not that they tried. Lizzie and the other girls sat in the first few rows, and she could hear them talking about making room for Stella when she got on in 3 stops. Roger always sat in the middle of the bus. The rest of the boys, seeing Anita's expression, were smart enough to steer clear. "Don't sit anywhere near annoying Anita," she heard one say. Within moments, the bus was pulling away, kids laughing and talking to one another about recess and lunch and forgetting all about her as usual. Annoying Anita. Anita tried to stop the hot, angry tears from flowing, but she was just so mad at Roger and Lizzie she couldn't help herself. When she was assertive with Roger, he chided her for it. Putting Lizzie in her place would cause issues at home, as would trying to tell Mum what she really wanted to do with her life. It had nothing to do with fame. What she wanted. Was she ready to even admit to it to herself? Was it a dream, or could she make it a reality? The words were on top of her tongue, begging to be said, or at least thought. But still, Anita hesitated. She was so focused on her future dreams that the bus stopped twice more, letting kids on without her even realizing it. Anita looked out the window and noticed they were passing the Claridge's Hotel and the Ritz London. They were in the Mayfair section of London now, where buildings had survived much of the bombing and embassies and hotels blanketed the wealthiest part of the city. Finally, the bus pulled over in front of the Seville Hotel. For the first time that morning, everyone on board grew quiet. "She's coming," Anita heard a boy whisper. She looked up to see her sister, Olive, Pippi, and Bridget smoothing their hair and fixing their headbands. Lizzie stood up, for once looking nervous. Anita wasn't sure why. There was no way Stella was going to be on time. She never was. Anita watched as a bellhop in a navy blue double-breasted suit with gold buttons saw the bus and did the same dance he did every morning. He went running inside through the revolving door. Through the window, they could see him motioning frantically to someone, and that person, too, went running. No one came. "Not again. We talked about this. Is she coming or not?" The bus driver called out the open bus door after a few minutes of nothing. "We are fetching Miss DeVille now," the bellhop said, sounding nervous as he sounded out the front door. As the bus idled, every kid stared out the window. It was as if they all collectively were holding their breath, waiting, watching, looking for her. Finally, the hotel's revolving door started to spin. The boy in front of Anita leaned forwards to watch as a girl emerged. Stella DeVille had appeared.